everybody, it's Kathryn from Jayne, Kathryn on Books, and welcome to everybody. I've got my top 5 for 2019 with three honourable mentions. So this was quite difficult to do. I didn't want to do a top 10 as it were. It was just too difficult to choose. It was hard enough to choose the top 5, and actually in some places you'll find that there was a couple of books for each because it was so hard for me to decide. So yeah, quite a mixture. I'm quite surprised just looking down here at my stack. I'm quite surprised there's a mix of genres here, and yeah, some surprising reads how much I loved this particular genre, especially in the YA section. So without further ado, let's crack on. We'll go with the honourable mentions first, shall we? Now, this is a love story for bewildered girls. This is by Emma Morgan. I don't think this has got enough booktube time, enough hype about it at all. I mean, it's a lovely cover. It's lovely, orange and pink French flaps, and this is, it's like a slice of life story really, but it's looking at 3 individuals, and they're really looking at 3 girls, and they all meet, chance meeting, and they really are at a time in life where they're looking into their sexuality. They're not quite sure where they want to be in life, and it really is beautifully written. I think it gives you a really good insight into, you know, what it's like to be in the GLBTQIA plus community, and the thoughts and feelings that you go through when you're working out where you are in life and what your sexuality is. And I think it's beautifully done. It says here, when Grace meets a beautiful woman at a party, she falls suddenly and desperately in love. And at the same party, lawyer Annie meets the man of her dreams, the only man she's ever met, whose table manners are up to her mother's standards. Yeah, we could all think about that, couldn't we? And across the city, Violet, who is afraid of almost everything, is making a discovery of her own. That for the first time in her life, she's falling in love with a woman. So it's funny, it's quite emotional at times, and it, you know, if you want a really fast-paced book, then this might not be for you, but beautifully written. I really liked the character development in here, and didn't quite get to my top 5 there, but thoroughly enjoyed it, and I think it, you know, I think it needs to be read more on BookTube. The next one is Cake by Nicole Brooks. This not being heard of all that much either. This has been, originally was on NetGalley, and one of the companies on there, not the publishers, I'll put it down below, I can't remember, reached out to me and said, would I like to choose a couple of books, because they were actually doing a blog tour, recommendation tour of some books. And this, I like the sound of the blurb on this, and very kindly Nicole Brooks, the author, sent this to me for my independent review, and I really enjoyed it. Again, I feel that it's a slice of life, looking at 2 women, 2 completely different lives. So we have Keely, who's the epitome of a self-made woman. Her ability to make the right choices, her superpower. She doesn't believe in looking back and has the drive, ambition and financial means to create the exact life she wants to live, regardless that her kids and her husband Andrew want or need. Michelle lives in stark contrast to Keely's life. She believes she was doomed from the start with a heartbreaking, poverty-stricken childhood. Bad choices in adulthood intensifies her lack of faith in herself. So completely different characters. We look at both their lives, we've got both their voices, and it's a very strong look about how women feel about themselves, a sense of identity, how things manage to turn around in our lives. We can make a difference, we can turn things around in our lives. We do have choices. Beautifully written. You know, I'll be honest, I wasn't expecting really for it to hit me emotionally as much as it did. And you know, it's a modern look at feminism, well written. People ought to start reading it. Not quite got to my top 5. And then last honourable mention is The Darker Arts, and this is the latest book in the series by Oscar de Muriel, the Freya McGray series. And as you know, if you've been with me a while, this is one of my favourite historical crime series. I'm giving this a shout out for the whole series. This was my least favourite book. It came out this year, and it was my least favourite of them all. Having said that, it was still good, and I think you need to read the series. The thing I love about this series is the characters, the character development between Freya McGray, both detectives. The younger one, who's Frey, very much comes from London, sticks to the book, wants everything to be done just so, even though we're back in time historically. I mean, this latest one's set in 1889. And McGray, well, things have happened to him in his life, and I think, you know, you need to read from book 1 to get a sense of what is happening, because there is an underriding theme here with what's happening in his life. And also we have the clairvoyant Katharina, this begins with a K. Katharina, she features in a small way in the other books, but this is her story. This crime revolves around her, and important tale to be told, but I have to say, not my favourite of the series, but please don't be put off, because they're all fantastic, especially Lock of the Dead. If you don't read any others, you must read Lock of the Dead. It's amazing. It's amazing. A bit ghoulish, bit vampirish, bit gothic. They're all a little bit gothic. Normally they'd be in my top 5 honourable mention for the Darker Arts this year. Let's get on to my top 5 now. Then it'll probably come as no surprise to see this in here. I talk about it a lot. The Key, Kathryn Hughes. And I think that, as you'll have heard me talk about this and the wrap up about this, it probably wouldn't mean quite as much. It's an excellent book, but the extra feels, the extra emotion is the fact that this rings a bell with early part of my nursing career. For when I first started as a young pre-nursing student in Sheffield, and unfortunately mental health hospitals were still very much institutionalised, very much like they used to be run in the old workhouses, and I saw a slice of that. And you know, this is so accurate in how it depicts that type of place. So we've got dual timelines, 1956 and 2006. And in 56 we've got Ellen that comes across. She's a photographer, and she comes across an old derelict hospital that used to be the old workhouse originally, then the old mental health hospital. And sorry, no, not now, I'm getting the timelines mixed up. 2006 we have Sarah, and she's the one that's the photographer, and she finds Ambergate Hospital, the old mental health hospital, and she finds some letters locked up in a suitcase and all sorts of things in there, and so she wants to look into the backstory of this place. The other timeline is in 1956, but this Ellen is actually a young student nurse, and she's starting her first day on her placement in this psychiatric hospital. And you know, her story, it very much felt like me starting as a young pre-nursing student, and my first placement being you know, in this this big well-known psychiatric hospital. And yeah, it just made me cry. The story is really well written. Both timelines, you will like both characters. They're both nicely written characters. And then it all comes together at the end, because obviously there is a link as usual with split time narratives. And I just thought it was beautiful. And I actually think that it might not be your bag, but I think it's a good read for most people to see how we've come on. We've still got a long way to go, but how we've come on in healthcare provision, how we've come on in mental health care, and how badly people used to be treated. And not everyone had mental ill health. Some of them were in there because they'd had illegitimate babies back in the day. So important read, difficult, I don't know where to place it. They were all very much equal, really, these top ones. All for different reasons. So that's The Key, Kathryn Hughes. And number 4, we've got our Eleanor Oliphant. Eleanor Oliphant is completely fine. Gail Honeyman. Can see all my little annotations there. Lovely. I loved this book. I could certainly see what all the hype was about. I loved Eleanor as a character. I think she was very real life, and I think a lot of people do. You know, there are many people out there that live alone. They're very lonely. They go to work, and work is the only place that they get any company. I personally feel with some of the traits in here that Eleanor, although they don't state it, I think she's somewhat on the spectrum. So I think she does have some level of Asperger's type problems. And she's just a lovely character that I just want to take her home and give her a big hug, really. And she makes a friendship with somebody else that really is marginalised, really. The two characters that come from the marginalised aspect of society where they live. He's a bit of a computer nerd. Nobody sort of takes much notice of him because, you know, he's very interested in just his computers, and quite a shy, difficult, social difficulties with him somewhat. And they make a beautiful friendship. And it's a look at these two there, you know, how they come together as friends, and again, like a slice of life. And it's really beautiful. I mean, how it came out, it wasn't last year it came out, was it 2017? 2017, but I only read it in 2019. So beautiful. If you've not read it, I think you'll enjoy that one. So then we get to number 3, and for number 3 there's a couple here, really. There's 2 that I want for this one. I've just got to find these. So in 3rd place I've got 2 YA contemporaries, but well, I think they are contemporary in as much that they are modern day. They are taking place really in the here and now. But I don't think that they are light and fluffy contemporary. You know, sometimes you want just a little bit of a light, fluffy contemporary read, and it you know, just makes you feel happy, and you can have a little bit of a laugh and you know, a smile at it. And these have got some very serious subjects. So the first of the 2 that I've chosen for number 3, 3rd spot, I couldn't decide between the 2, but Every Last Word by Tamara Island Stone, and this is a YA, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It wasn't a light fluffy read. It really was quite serious and dark in places, and it looked at some important topics like mental ill health in teenagers, bullying really in teenagers, how people are under pressure, how young adults are under pressure really from their peer groups, etc. So we have Samantha, Sam, most of her friends know her as Sam, and she has OCD, and she sees a a health professional on a regular basis to discuss what's happening and to keep this under check, and to appear quite as normal as she possibly can at school. So she's got some friends at school which are like the top girls, you know, there's always those that are very popular, aren't they, and everybody wants to be in their gang, as it were. You've got to wear the right shoes and the right makeup and do all the things they want, even if it's all quite false and you don't like them. You know, and that's nothing new. It used to still go on when I was in senior school, so that's nothing new. But she wants people to see her just as an everyday girl at school and not notice that she's got this problem. So she does keep it under check quite well. But deep down she knows that these aren't her sort of people. And then one day she meets somebody called Caroline, and she's completely different. She's a bit of a hippie sort, doesn't you know, do what the gang want, doesn't fall in line with everybody else, and they get on really well. They form this really nice friendship, and the more they become friends, the more I think that Sam realises that how false her other friendships are. So we're looking at all that. Now, after they've known each other a while, Caroline introduces Sam to like a bit of a secret society called the Poets' Corner, and these meet in the there's like the school hall where they've got a stage where they put on stage productions and things, and all the back rooms where they keep the props and everything. So they have a meeting there. There's full of members that Sam didn't realise that, you know, they were all interested in poetry, reading out aloud and stage shows, that sort of thing. All the things that she really enjoys but doesn't do with the so-called other friends because it's not the cool thing to do. So she's introduced to this Poets' Corner, and, you know, at first it takes a while for her to be accepted by this gang, as it were, and its leader is a boy who called AJ, who she really fancies, but they have a difficult start really because he, you know, he's a bit on the defensive, shall we say, for anybody new that comes. So they go there, they meet there often. It's a place where they can write their own poetry. And I know some people have said, well, I'm not sure, poetry's not for me, and I found that bit a little bit boring. Probably I got more out of this reading this at my age, you know, because you've had more experiences of life. I feel that some of the poetry was so heartfelt that you could relate to it, perhaps more so than perhaps some of the young adult audience. But I think everybody should pay more attention to what's being said in these poems. Don't just see it on the light of it, oh, it's a book that's got poetry in and I don't like poetry, because there's like hidden meanings, and really get a sense of what problems and what things are hurting these young people. And the only way they can express it is by going to this group, this club, and writing about it in the poetry. Yeah, quite thought-provoking really. It's got a very big twist at the end, very big twist. I didn't see coming. I really didn't see coming, and you think, you know, you're plodding along and you know, it's sort of medium-paced really, medium-paced book. But I liked it that way because I think I could get a sense of what really is going through people's minds. And I think one day she comes to the realisation that, you know, stop trying to be somebody else, stop trying to please other people, and be who you are, just be yourself and be accepted for who you are. Beautiful. Beautiful. I'm going to read some more by her. That's certainly not the last book. So that's Every Last Word, Tamara Islandstone. Then the other one in third place is another YA. and this is What is Normal by Juliana Stone. And this is a contemporary love story, and again we've got completely different characters. So we have Trevor, who is the one that everybody wants to be friends with in high school. You know, he is into his sport, and all the girls fancy him, and you know, he's got this gang of lads that look up to him. Can be a bit cocky and a bit, you know, full of himself, really, a touch arrogant. And then we have a girl called Everly, and she's quite the opposite, really. She comes from her father's a pastor, so she's sort of been brought up completely different to him. She's quite a shy, unassuming girl, and her life isn't all what people think. You know, they think she's got this happy family life, her father's this pastor, and you know, everything's marvellous, but things aren't all what they should be in that family. And eventually they meet, really, and perhaps this wouldn't have happened had Trevor not had a nasty car accident, and he's in a coma, and he goes through a period of rehabilitation. And in a way, this is the two of their stories and how they can relate to each other and how they help each other, really, although they're from completely different backgrounds, completely different personalities. And it's really beautiful. I think it's quite a touching book, and well worth a read. I've not really seen much of this about either. So that's Some Kind of Normal, Juliana Stone. And I've gone straight to number 1 because we've got 2 at number 3, and I think that we'll go to number 1 now because it's joint first. I'm not giving a second, just giving a joint first here. So, seeing as we're on the YA kick, we will go to this one. It Starts With You. S.K. Wright. So it's really interesting that, like, in a way, my first and you know, 3 of my favourite books are from the YA genre. Not typically one that I used to read that much of, but I found some really fantastic ones last year. The reason why I've put this in first place is because it's a bit of it has a bit of everything in here. So it's, you know, it starts off as you think that this is going to be a love story. Well, I did. I thought this was going to be a love story. We've got Eva, who is a popular girl in school. Everybody wants to be in Eva's gang. Again, similar sort of trope to start with. However, it then turns into a crime scene. So Eva's body's found in a ditch, and everybody seems to think that she's been killed by a boyfriend. Now, her boyfriend is Luke, and he's sort of thought to be a bit of a bad lad, bit of a bad influence, really, on Eva. And he doesn't come from the right side of town, so everybody assumes that he is going to be a bad un, and he's going to be the one that's I think people saw them have a little bit of a fallout at a party, and off she stomped, and then she's dead. So people put 2 and 2 together and decide that it's him. There's 6 narrative strands in this, and it's not confusing at all. We're looking at friends, 6 people telling their story about that particular episode, about what happened the night Eva died, and they're not confusing. You know exactly who's talking because the names are always written at the front of the chapters, but you know it's very nicely segmented together, and it makes you challenge what your beliefs are about various things, and it makes you challenge how quick we are to judge people. You know, how quick people are to judge somebody that doesn't wear the right clothes, that's not very rich, that lives on the wrong side of town, who, you know, that sort of thing. And I think we all do it to a certain extent. We all prejudge, and I think it makes you look at yourself. You know, we can look at it in a different light as my age group reading this. The target audience is YA, and they can look at how, you know, preconceived ideas in their age group. But it doesn't stop as you get older. I think, unfortunately, we're all to blame for making instant assumptions when we see somebody, we first meet them. Sometimes our first impressions aren't usually far wrong. You get a bit of a feel about somebody, but then again, you know, we can be a bit more biased than we think we are at times. So it's another one that makes you dig deep as well, looking at, you know, quite thought-provoking. Beautifully written. You really felt all the characters were real. I feel like it was a bit of a cliffhanger. I really want it to continue. I don't know if there's another bit coming or what's happening, but I feel like, oh, you know, I want this to keep going. I didn't want to put it down. It's very, it's charismatic, I think, is the word that I want to give to it, which is strange. You usually say charismatic for a person, don't you? They've got this charismatic character. But this book's just got, I don't know, it just draws you in, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think that the last three, these three that I've mentioned, are very readable for an adult audience as well as a YA audience. I think the older end of the YA, I'll appreciate them more. But I think they are very, you know, very transferable to an adult audience, and I really enjoyed them and can't wait to read more from those authors. So my last one, in first place, joint first with It Ends With You, is The Killer in Me, Olivia Kiernan. Now, this is the second in a series. I was actually on the blog tour for this year because I'd reviewed the first one last year and thoroughly enjoyed it. I was involved in the blog tour and the launch of this crime thriller, and yes, didn't disappoint at all. You know, sometimes you think the first one was really good. Some authors suffer from second book syndrome. Well, certainly not with Olivia Kiernan. This was just as good, everything I wanted it to be. And it's a procedural, police procedural, but there's enough in it. It doesn't overtake the whole book, and I felt the same with the first one. It doesn't overtake the whole book, because I think sometimes people are not so keen on police procedurals because the character, the main character, and the procedure stuff takes over. And sometimes you end up, that takes over, and you don't get much of a plot, you don't get much of suspense or anything. Whereas this is, I think, and this is what's made it to the top slot in a way, that I think Olivia Kiernan writes a police procedural that also includes so much more, that has you on the edge of your seat. That it can be dark and grisly. I don't think this was... Yes, it was dark and grisly. I'm trying to think if it's as dark and grisly as the first one. I can't. There's still some dark and grisly bits in this. So if you don't like a bit of gore and a bit of, you know, if you're not one that can watch forensic science type things on television where you get all the gory detail, then you might struggle a little bit with this. It's not constantly, but there's still elements of it. We get all sorts of serial killers and various strange characters in this book, and the plot is paced just right. The plot is suspenseful, and there's twists and turns, there's red herrings where, you know, you suddenly think, right, I think I know who the baddie is. Oh yes, but is it really? So in this particular one, Frankie Sheenan, who is the female protagonist, she's Detective Chief Superintendent. Now I love that as well, that we've got Boss Girl, and she, you know, she, if you haven't read book one, I think really you can read it as a standalone. It's quite easily could be read as a standalone, but I think, you know, read book one first. And she's a tough character. She doesn't take fools easily. She has got to her position through sheer hard work, and I think her character is well written. You really get a sense of her character from book one. And there's what happens in this one is she meets somebody in a pub. She's not really supposed to meet this guy. He's been released from prison, and it's going back to 17 years ago when this crime was committed by this guy, and she's been asked to be part of this TV documentary looking into this crime and sort of finding out more about it and interviewing. She's been asked to interview him. Now really I don't think she's supposed to do this, but meanwhile, while this is happening, we've got other strands to the narrative of a murder or murders taking place. Oh yes, there's more than one murder, and there's various strands going on, and you're led to believe, well, you're led down various alleys as to whether everything is all connected, whether it's interconnected, should I say. But it says not everyone working on the cases of this old crime wants the truth to come out, and the corridors of power have their own vested interest. And Frankie pinpoints just what is making her so nervous. The fact that anyone could be the next victim when justice is the killer. So it's very fast paced, very on the seat of your, you know, edge of your seat. The murders are a bit grisly, they're a bit disturbing, and yeah, I loved it. I really did love it. This is the thing, I think this is from the press release, when we had the press release. She's got a new boss who's come, who is called Donna Hegarty. Don't like her. I have to say I don't like her. I don't think you can trust her. She's one of these that plays everything by the book, and nobody's allowed to be a bit maverick. So I think there's more to come as we go on with the series. I think there's more to come there between her and Frankie. I don't think all's going to go that well. So there we go, The Killer in Me, joint first for 2019 reads, with It Ends With You, S.K. Wright. Let me know if you've read any of those. Hopefully, if you haven't, I've stirred your attention up a little bit, got you wanting to go out and try them. Thoroughly surprised. I had 21 5-star books in 2019 out of 112 books I read. And what a mixture for the top lot. That shows you why sometimes you have to read outside your comfort zone, isn't it? And you'll be surprised what you find. So thank you for joining me. Again, a very happy new year to all of you. And I'll see you again next video. Bye for now.